Good evening. This is MemphisWeather.net meteorologist Erik Proseus recording a video blog for you tonight. This is recorded at 8 p.m. Monday night, November 23rd. We've got two topics to talk about tonight. The first is going to be a outlook for your Thanksgiving travel week, and if you're headed out of town, we're going to bring you the information you need to know about what to expect across the region and across the country this week. Actually, it doesn't look too bad, especially the first half of the week. And then after we talk about that a little bit and give you the forecast for the Memphis area for this week, we're going to move into some of the highlights from our MemphisWeather.net winter outlook that we put out last week. If you haven't read that already, it's available on our blog at blog.MemphisWeather.net, and then you can click on the link near the top that says winter outlook, and that'll get you all the details. But without further ado, we're going to get right into what we're expecting for this week travel wise. Starting off with tomorrow. This is a forecast map produced by the National Weather Service for Tuesday, November 24th, and you're going to see that most of the country is covered by high pressure, especially areas east of the Rocky Mountains. So the weather looks pretty good in general across the central and southern plains, across the mid-south, and all the way over to the eastern seaboard. In fact, this is fairly warm high pressure. Pretty good southerly winds going to start to come around the backside of this, and temperatures are going to be fairly favorable as we head into tomorrow, especially across the eastern half of the country. The next weather system is moving inland and onshore in the Pac Northwest, and that system is going to be moving across the country as we go into the week, and we'll be looking at that as we go across. We'll move into Wednesday here. On the backside of this high pressure system that's over the east coast, we are going to see some return flow from the Gulf of Mexico, and that's going to mean some rain and a few thunderstorms across the plains area during the day Wednesday, so that'll be our first big travel day. And if you are headed west from the Memphis area, you won't have to get too far to the west before you start running into chances of rain, especially the later in the day that you go and the farther to the west that you go. So expecting scattered rain, some thunderstorms possible down across the central and southern plains down towards Dallas, Oklahoma City, and then farther north, just some rain showers up around the Great Lakes. If you're headed up north towards Chicago, that area is going to expect some scattered showers during the day on Wednesday. The frontal system off to the west continues to make progress into the Rocky Mountains, and we're going to see some snow behind that up across the northern Rockies, so the Yellowstone area down towards the Wasatch Range east of Salt Lake City. So pretty decent snow is expected on Wednesday. And that snow is going to extend back across into the Intermountain West as well, and into the Sierras, where they'll be seeing some pretty good snows in the Sierras of California on Wednesday as well. A little bit of a break between those two areas, though, where no precip is expected. Let's take a look at the forecast maps heading out from there. So this is at 6 a.m. Thanksgiving morning. You see the high pressure system on the east has moved off into the North Atlantic, but still a real nice return flow behind that. So we're going to see some pretty warm weather for a good part of the eastern U.S. on Thanksgiving Day. Looks like actually for the just about everything east of the Mississippi River is going to be looking pretty good on Thanksgiving Day. That frontal system off to the west continues to make progress, though, across the northern plains. It'll be headed into the upper Midwest, and then another front draped back over the Four Corners. So this is the area where you can expect precipitation to be occurring on Thursday. Moving into Friday, that frontal system moves into the Mississippi Valley. It'll be Friday morning, sitting about right over Chicago, down through St. Louis and back into the Dallas area. We're expecting a pretty good amount of rain right along and behind that front. We'll be getting into that for the Memphis area as well, the Mid-South here on Friday, expecting those rain chances to go up as that frontal system approaches. And as we head into Saturday, you'll see that front then moves across the northeastern U.S., drapes all the way across south of the Ohio Valley into the Tennessee Valley, down to a low pressure system down over Louisiana. All of this on the backside of that, where the high pressure is building in. It's going to be pretty cold high pressure up over the northern central plains on Saturday, and the front itself is going to kind of stall out across this region, and that's going to mean rain chances for right into and through the weekend for the Mid-South, unfortunately. So it looks like Thanksgiving Day will be pretty good, but then as we head into the weekend, those rain chances go up, and by Sunday, low pressure systems moving along that front as it tracks through the Mid-South into the interior southeastern portions of the country, and that's going to continue our rain chances right into Sunday. Let's take a quick look at temperatures for Thursday morning, Thanksgiving morning. I mentioned the fairly mild weather. These are low temperatures on Thursday morning, 50s and 60s across the southern plains, extending all the way up into the Mid-South region. A little bit cooler up in the Northeast, down in the 30s, but that is actually not unusual for this time of year at all, Thanksgiving morning. And you'll see that the colder air is building in behind that cold front, off over the Rocky Mountains and moving into the northern plains. That continues as we head into the high temperatures on Thursday, where we will be seeing temperatures in the 60s, pretty mild weather. Look at those 60s, about 60 degrees, extending all the way as far north as the New York City area. So the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade looks really nice weather-wise. They're going to be seeing pretty mild temperatures up in that area. 70s down along the Gulf Coast, but a pretty sharp frontal boundary with those colder temperatures siphoning in behind that on that high pressure that's moving in and building over the plains. Low temperatures on Friday morning, still pretty mild, but this is going to be a rainy pattern, so it looks like we will see mild low temperatures here in the Mid-South as that cold air builds into the west, starts infiltrating the southern plains, continue mild up the East Coast. Here's your high temperatures for Friday afternoon, and really not bad, still mild weather. You can see that definite sharp frontal boundary is separating very cold air back over the plains. These are high temperatures on Friday. Look at those back below freezing up over the northern Rockies there, and then still 70s down to the coast. So if you're headed south from here for the weekend, looks to be mild and pretty nice weather. Saturday morning, we'll start to see the temperatures start to fall a little bit in the Mid-South as that colder air moves in, and for Saturday afternoon, the high temperatures much cooler than they were on Friday behind that front, as that front sits pretty much right over the area. The warmer weather is going to be pushed off to the southeast into the southeastern U.S., and the afternoon highs on Saturday across a good part of the western and central U.S. pretty cold. We're down into the 30s for the highs across most of the plains. As we head into Sunday, here's the afternoon highs on Sunday. Again, that colder air is pushing across to the east, and the warmer air again pushed down to our south. These are the chances of rain move through each day here. This is Thursday, and we see very high chances of rain on Thanksgiving Day, all the way from the Great Lakes across the plains, Chicagoland area through the Midwest, and all the way down into Dallas. If you're headed into central Texas for Thanksgiving Day, it looks like it's going to be a wet one there. And these high chances of precipitation off to the west are actually snowfall coming down on Thanksgiving Day. But most of the east, again, dry for Thanksgiving Day. So we head into Friday, you're going to see that those high rain chances are moving east just a little bit. Looks like we've got a real good chance of rain on Black Friday. If you're going to be out doing your shopping early in the morning, you're going to want to keep the ponchos or the umbrellas with you. Factor that into all of the bags that you're carrying and so forth as well. It's going to be a wet day on Friday. And then as we move into Saturday, unfortunately, it just doesn't get any better. Looks like we could see some lulls here and there over the weekend, but we're going to see periods on and off of rain and showers right into Saturday and right into Sunday, as a matter of fact, as well. So you can see pretty good chances of rain from the Dallas area all the way back up to the Memphis area. Those are going to be pretty good chances of rain if you're headed back into town on Sunday. I want to take a quick look at the snowfall that's going to be moving into the west here. We're starting off with the Tuesday morning snowfalls, and as we move this across, you will see the area of snow up here in the Pac Northwest starting to move east. So this is Tuesday afternoon, still staying up to the northwest. As we get into the early morning hours on Wednesday, let this load here for just a second. You'll see that that snowfall starts to move a little bit further to the east. Pretty good chances of snow up across the high plains there and back into the Intermountain West. And by Thanksgiving afternoon, that's going to move even further to the east. We'll start to see that move into the Denver area and into the Dakotas. Pretty good amount of snow out around the mountains of Salt Lake City up into Wyoming. And then I'll fast forward it one more time here into Friday, and you'll see that that shifts even further east into the plains as that loads. You're going to see those snowfall chances move all the way into Nebraska, Kansas, up towards the Minneapolis area on Saturday, and also some still lingering around the Denver area. As far as icing is concerned, this is the only chance of icing we really see here is going to be on Thursday as that system moves in. Does look like there's could see up to 1/10 of an inch of freezing rain to the northwest of Kansas City. This is going to be up north of I-80, south of I-70, coming down between Omaha and Wichita. that general area is going to be the portion that's impacted. So as far as the Memphis area for this week, Thanksgiving week, here's the forecast that we've got posted. For tomorrow, partly sunny skies, afternoon high around 61 degrees. It's going to be a pretty pleasant day. It's about 5 degrees warmer than today. For Wednesday, increasing high clouds. It looks like it's going to continue to be dry, though. Those winds coming up out of the south, we'll see an afternoon high temperature around 64 degrees. For your Thanksgiving, down here, mostly cloudy skies. It is going to be a little bit breezy, and the rain chances look to hold off until we get to the overnight hours. So Thursday should be a pretty nice day. Highs again in the mid-60s. Not so bad. Even in the morning, it's going to be pretty mild as well, lower 50s as you wake up Thursday morning. And then as we head into Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, it looks like it's going to turn wet, and we could see a fair amount of rain. It's going to start off fairly mild on Friday, but those temperatures will drop Saturday and Sunday down to where we have highs only near 50, lows in the 40s. So the temperatures really aren't going to move that much during the weekend. And again, I don't expect a complete washout Saturday and Sunday, but it does look like we could see periods of showers off and on throughout both of those days, with cool weather continuing. Of course, that all moves out by the time we head back to work next Monday. So that's a look at your forecast overview for this week. If you're traveling, you're going to be out and about. Hopefully that gives you some ideas of kind of what to expect as we go through. I want to shift gears now and talk just a little bit about the winter outlook that we put out last week, and I'm going to start off by going to this graphic right here. And so most of you probably know, and you can get the details from this on blog.MemphisWeather.net. Click the winter outlook. But it's been no secret that El Nino is going to be driving the weather patterns this winter. And so I wanted to take you a little bit through what an El Nino typically means, what El Nino is, and then talk about some of the factors that go into a winter outlook before presenting the kind of the final bullet points for our winter here in the Mid-South. So this is a normal graphic, or a graphic that shows kind of the normal patterns when there's not an El Nino occurring across the Pacific Ocean. And so this is the area around the equator of the Pacific Ocean that we focus on when we look at El Nino conditions. So North America is up in here in the upper right portion of this map. This is the western coast of South America, Australia, Japan, and the Philippines. So this is the Pacific Basin. And under a normal pattern, typically it's fairly cool over the eastern Pacific, offshore the South American continent, and normally we have these trade winds that are easterly trade winds that are blowing across the ocean from east to west. Thus we call them easterly winds, and they tend to push the warmer water over into the western Pacific, where we typically would expect most of the rainfall to be occurring. It's the warmer oceans there providing extra moisture to the atmosphere through evaporation. That creates condensation and of course clouds, and then you get rainfall out of that. So in a normal, especially in the wintertime, this is kind of what we expect. And the circulation that takes place basically is one where we have rising air over the western Pacific and sinking air over the eastern Pacific, and so it creates kind of this atmospheric circulation that takes place from east to west across the oceans, and then up in the upper atmosphere from west to east. Now when we have an El Nino pattern going on, then we have a little bit of a change to that, and basically what that means is these trade winds that are blowing across from east to west weaken, and so they don't push this warmer water all the way over into the western Pacific. And what happens is the warmth builds over the eastern and central Pacific in the sea surface temperatures. And so the temperatures of the oceans then of the ocean in the eastern and central Pacific is much warmer than normal. And so because you get warmer than normal temperatures in the eastern and central Pacific, then you get more rainfall also in these areas. And so what normally would occur where you have the rainfall in the western Pacific and rising air there actually happens further east in the Pacific. And as you can see, that affects the entire pattern over the Pacific Ocean as far as the atmospheric tendencies occur. So the rising air results in the increased precipitation and convection or thunderstorms to the east. And over in the western Pacific, you have the sinking air that takes place, and that results in cooler than normal temperatures over in the western Pacific, less rain in Australia. Typically this is in El Nino is when Australia is kind of getting into a drought, and we get all of this precipitation that happens over in the eastern Pacific. Now I want to switch over and show you El Nino as it's occurring right now. So this is the latest sea surface temperature anomalies, which means departures from normal across the globe. But we're going to focus here on the Pacific Basin. And what sticks out like a sore thumb is these much greater than normal temperatures that are occurring along the equator in the central and eastern Pacific. And some of these temperatures is high, according to this graph, as high as much as 4 to 5 degrees Fahrenheit, I believe we've got here. So this is showing you that these temperatures are much warmer than normal. You can see there's some areas of cooler than normal water over in the western Pacific, and so this is a classic El Nino setup. And in fact, by some measures over the last few weeks or so, this has been recorded as one of the strongest El Ninos on record. Now, there's many different flavors of El Ninos. They all are slightly different, and they all produce slightly different results as far as atmospheric patterns across the globe are concerned. We are watching this in particular across the central and central to eastern Pacific, where that seems to be most of the warmth is. Some of the more classic El Ninos that we've had in the past that have been stronger, like 97, 98, for example, saw the warmth right off of the South American coast. And while it's plenty warm there, we can see that there's kind of a transition to even warmer water, or even warmer than normal water, a little farther offshore than South America. So this is more of a central to central eastern Pacific warming rather than just a far eastern Pacific warming. So this is going to have a definite impact on our weather during the upcoming winter, and you can read more about how that works in the blog. But a few other factors that I want to point out here. First of all, we continue to have well above normal temperatures in the northern Pacific as well, and this happened last year. It's been around actually for a couple of years and has contributed to a lot of the drought conditions we're seeing along the west coast, because where you have this warmer than normal water, you end up with warmer than normal temperatures and a ridge of high pressure that tends to set up in this area, and that suppresses rainfall along the west coast. And that pattern has been in place for quite a while and has caused the drought conditions we have on the west coast. The other areas along the eastern Atlantic, and we also see that there's some very warm waters right near the coastline on the eastern Atlantic, and I think that might also play into the winter patterns for the United States, particularly for the East Coast, because in this case, where you have warmer water and low pressure systems passing through there, you end up with more moisture to work with and tends to produce heavier precipitation. So I think that might factor into it as well. And then we have a large area of below normal water temperatures up here in the northern Atlantic, and that's part of a pattern that we call the North Atlantic Oscillation. I think that will also factor into what we see this winter. So let's look at what the typical patterns look like in an El Nino for the winter time. This is just the classic El Nino scenario, and again, every El Nino is a little bit different and has a little bit different results, but this is basically what we usually see during a typical El Nino winter. The Pacific jet stream, which normally would have some more dips and turns in it, or kind of ridges and troughs in it, tends to be fairly persistent from west to east across the southern United States, actually just across northern Mexico and the Gulf of Mexico. And so that tends to produce a wetter pattern across the southern United States, and it also tends to produce cooler weather across the southern U.S. because of the persistence of clouds and rainfall. You get more clouds, more rainfall, more systems moving across in that jet stream, and it tends to produce cooler than normal temperatures. Now, up in the northern part of the U.S., we have this polar jet stream that is that will affect the northern U.S. weather, and that polar jet stream in the typical El Nino stays north of the United States across Canada, and so below that, that kind of separates the very cold wintertime air that we a lot of times will see, of course, dipping down into the U.S. From the warmer air that would typically be displaced a little further south. So we end up seeing a warmer than normal pattern across the northern tier of the United States, and also a fairly pronounced drying that takes place from the southern Great Lakes down into the Ohio Valley. And so that area also sometimes extends further south. We're going to say Memphis is right about in this area, about where my cursor is there. So sometimes that dry area works its way down into the Mid-South over El Nino winters. But a lot of times this persistent pattern to the south does actually remain down to our south. Now we have other patterns and other what we call teleconnections that work into a winter outlook, and I don't have time to go through in detail a whole lot of those, but you will find the details of those in the winter outlook on the blog. One of them I'll point out is what's called the North Atlantic Oscillation, and this winter the NAO, or North Atlantic Oscillation, is generally forecast to be in a negative phase. And what a negative phase means is that we do get a slightly weaker jet stream to the north, which results in some of the colder air from the north spilling into especially the eastern part of the United States. And so while we expect a fair amount of warm weather across the northern tier, we could be seeing some outbreaks of colder weather across the northeastern and into the eastern U.S. And when that happens, it tends to be colder in the northeast, and you do end up getting a little bit snowier pattern as well, because you have, especially with this warmer water off of the North Atlantic up here, it could be colder and snowy in that portion of the country. So let's take a look at what NOAA has to say. We're going to start off first with their precipitation map. This is the NOAA winter outlook for this year, National Weather Service precipitation, and they're forecasting drier than normal weather across the northern tier of the United States into that area of the Great Lakes and Ohio Valley that we saw on the El Nino, the typical El Nino pattern. The percentages that are applied here are the percentages that the chance that it will be drier than normal. So for instance, the greater than 50% chance means there's a better than 50-50 chance it's going to be drier than normal. And down here along the southern tier of the U.S., as you see, we talked about the persistent jet pattern across the south, and that brings wetter weather. And so we expect, especially the southern half of California, across the southern tier of the United States, they're also calling for the southern plains up into portions of the central plains being wetter than normal as well. And that continues along the Gulf Coast. Florida tends to be fairly stormy in Florida during El Nino patterns. We think that'll hold this year as well. And up into the mid-Atlantic. And this was where I was pointing out a little bit ago that we could see a little bit more of a storm track that kind of goes up the east coast, maybe a few more nor'easters or at least the presence of those nor'easters during the wintertime. So this is what NOAA thinks as far as precipitation. You'll notice the Mid-South is in an equal chances area, which means that NOAA doesn't see any signal to indicate that there will be a better than normal chance of wetter or drier weather. In other words, something fairly close to normal. Let's take a look at the temperature map. You can see that they do agree with the El Nino, typical El Nino pattern. Very warm across the northern tier of the country. In fact, up in the Pacific Northwest, greater than a 60% chance that it's going to end up above normal for this winter. And across the southern U.S., where that jet pattern goes across, and you get more systems moving through that area where it's wetter, you would also expect cooler than normal temperatures. And you can see the state of Texas and Louisiana, best chances of seeing below normal temperatures during this winter. The cooler than normal weather does extend up fairly close to the Mid-South, and so basically some sections of southern Arkansas into northern Mississippi, NOAA indicates a better than 33% chance that it could be below normal this year as well. But most of the Mid-South, again, in an equal chances type of regime. So let's take a look at what we are expecting from our winter outlook. Here are the bullet points for here in the Mid-South this winter, and we're going to start off with the fact that we do have the strong El Nino through midwinter. It looks like we're going to start to see a weakening of that by this spring, but it'll still be a general El Nino pattern. But there are many other climate variables that are also going to have an influence on our weather. Temperatures is the first one here, and for my winter outlook using basically an analog set of years. In other words, other winters that I think are going to match up fairly closely with what we get this winter, and many of them are El Nino type winters. I have 10 of those. They're listed on the blog, but the average from those indicates that the December time period usually starts above normal, maybe a couple of degrees above normal to start the winter, and then by the time we get into late February and early March, or January into February actually, temperatures do drop below normal. And so November has certainly started above normal. We're running about 4 degrees above average for the month through yesterday. I expect the above normal temperatures to continue into December, perhaps not that much above normal. And then as we transition into 2016, I think our average temperatures are going to be falling as we go into January and February to more below normal. So prepare somewhat like last year for the possibility of a cold second half of the winter. Precipitation, we are above normal for November again. It looks like we may stay somewhat wet above normal to end 2015. December, I wouldn't be surprised to see an above normal precipitation, but not necessarily in the snow category. I think we'll be more rain there, especially with those temperatures still trending above normal. But then as we get into the second half of the winter, once again, it looks like precipitation is going to trend downwards as far as the total amounts of precipitation. I'll remind you that last year, even though we had a fair amount from February into early March of at least threats of winter weather, the total precipitation in January into February was also below normal last year. So even though we had a couple of snowfall events, the overall precipitation for the early part of 2015 was below normal. I wouldn't be surprised if something similar to that happens once again. Severe weather activity in an El Nino pattern in the Mid-South tends to be fairly few and far between as far as events. With that, the persistent Pacific jet stream down closer to the Gulf Coast, I think the storm track that would produce that potential severe weather, or at least the best chances, is going to be farther south from Texas along the Gulf Coast into Florida. Probably the best chance for severe weather. Can't certainly rule something out in this area, but I think we're going to see below average severe weather, which means when we don't typically get too much that time of year, it should be close to none. And then as far as snowfall is concerned, everybody wants to know about snowfall, and the average snowfall in Memphis, annual snowfall, is 3.4 inches over a 30-year climate period. Last year we had 2.3 inches through the end of February, and then we got the doozy on the first week of March 4th and 5th, when there were 3 to 4 inches of snow that fell outside of what we would typically call winter. So we ended up above normal last year. And my forecast for this year, the outlook for this winter, calls once again for slightly above normal snowfall, and I do expect that we could see that once again tilted towards the last half of the year, especially in that late January into early March period. As we start to get the moisture returning in the springtime, early March, that tends to be, if there's a cold blast that comes through, when we have the best chance of getting accumulating snow, just because we have more moisture in the air. So we could be in line for another late season snowstorm. Certainly am not predicting this far out by any means individual storm systems, but I think the trends point to the possibility of that. So I wouldn't be surprised to see somewhere around 3 to 4, maybe 5 inches of snow this year. I think that might be kind of on the outlier side there, but I would be surprised, I think, to get all the way through the winter and not see any snow. So hopefully that is some good news for those of you who like snowfall. If you don't, you can cling to the first half of the winter and know that we should be a little bit above normal temperature-wise continuing into December. So once again, I invite you to check the entire details of this out on our blog. Go to blog.MemphisWeather.net, click the winter outlook at the top. It's going to take you to the, we've actually got a 2-part blog. It's going to take you to part 2 that has the details of the outlook that are presented here. But there's also a link there back to part 1 that gives you some background on El Nino, talks to you a little about kind of what that pattern means and how it comes about. So it's more of a background. Part 2 that's linked there off the blog will give you all of the details. So hopefully that's been helpful for you tonight. Certainly as you're traveling this week, or if you're out and about, make sure you've got the MemphisWeather.net app with you. The Stormwatch Plus severe weather notifications, also winter weather notifications are built in there. That does cover nationwide weather, so you can use that no matter where you're traveling, get your alerts and so forth for any place that you're traveling across the country. We certainly hope that you have safe travels this week, that you enjoy time spent with family and friends, and make sure that if you're going to go shopping this weekend in this area, that you take your umbrella with you. For MemphisWeather.net, I'm meteorologist Erik Proseus. Hope everyone has a great evening.